Dita, I want to thank you for joining me on this podcast and for taking the time to be able to interview with me today. I'm sure we all have a lot going on, especially with the state of everything right now and exams coming up. So I really, really do appreciate that. Dita and I first met last spring when we were both in the process of joining an on-campus organization, Kappa, our sorority. Since we have been initiated, so that's been very exciting. But I first wanted to interview Dita for this assignment because I remember when we were going through the process of getting to know each other, you had this one phrase that you'd always say when we were meeting people, and it was that your fun fact was that you live out of your suitcase. So I was just wondering if you could explain for the audience what the statement means for you and how you came up with it.
So I use the phrase "I live out of my suitcase" because I primarily spend my life in a suitcase. Like, I tend to travel around the world. Well, now it's obviously harder because of the coronavirus, but I tend to spend my time around the world just traveling for most of my time off of school. So for most of my breaks, and this started at a very young age, and I continue to do it till now. So, and especially more now since I'm more like independent, mature, and like older, obviously. So yeah, I feel like traveling is my hobby, my passion. That's why I live out of my suitcase.
Awesome, sounds great. So then just going, like you said, because you said you've been traveling for a long time throughout your lifetime, can you give a little bit of a summary and history of all the places you've traveled so far?
Yes, of course. So I was actually born and raised in Indonesia, and growing up, I was my family um was really into traveling and like seeking the unknown and just like immersing in like a different environment. And it's a pattern that you see in my family, that my cousins, my distant relatives, like my mom, and it's just been instilled in our like family as a tradition. So for every break we would travel to a new place, and eventually some of my relatives actually have found like some place that they found by traveling that they just absolutely loved and actually moved there. And like one of my cousins, they moved to the United Kingdom, London, after constantly traveling and then visiting London, going back and forth and falling in love with the place, and finally moving there. And I have another cousin who relocated to the Netherlands. And so just so many places around the world. And I've obviously visited them when I was younger until now. So I always looked up to them as role models, that one day I would do the same thing. Like, I travel and find my own place that I would love. And it wasn't because I didn't like where I was from, but I feel like I've always been the type of person to explore something new and not stick to the same routine. And especially with like the level of, I don't really know how to word it, like the level of, I guess, curiosity and traveling and stuff like that within my family, like within my within my family. um it I just wasn't comfortable like being stuck in one place that I couldn't be I felt like I couldn't be myself
Yeah.
in until I traveled and came here for boarding school and officially found like my place.
Got it. Got it. No, that was such a great way to like give a holistic overview of what your journey means to you and like where you've come from so far. So thank you for really sharing that. Going on further about this idea of traveling, and you touched on independence, but I was just wondering if you could give some insight to our audience. What skills have you learned from traveling, and what skills do you recommend travelers should have?
With traveling, the more you do it over time, the more you have this sense of direction. Not that people who don't travel don't have a sense of direction, but I feel like it's a more spontaneous thing where you're not familiar with a new environment and how like things work, and just the different culture and the different ways on lifestyles and ways of life in different places. There's more it's more spontaneous than just like traveling or navigating your way in your local area. So I guess like just being spontaneous and open to anything and everything. I think open-mindedness is one of the keys in with traveling, because um you're you're going to expose yourself to something super new and super different, and something that you've never experienced before. So knowing to be open and understanding that there will be a difference, and that we must respect that difference, because not everyone's the same. There's obviously diversity in this world. um, and um, yeah, understanding the difference and respecting it. And it's more of like you give and you share and you learn. So I don't know if that is tying in all together, but going somewhere, learning their culture, and bringing or understanding a piece of it, and um, picking up a picking up like something from a different culture and sharing a part of yours as well. Like everything I feel like the more you travel, everything just blends in together, like a mold of like multiculturalness.
Yeah, that was great. That was so perfect. I love that line you said there. I feel like it really summed everything up perfectly. And then going off those skills that you talk about being like open-minded and spontaneous, can you give an example of a specific time where you used these skills, or you found these skills were super helpful in this situation?
I think that with being open-minded and independent and spontaneous, um, I learned that I feel like I'm more flexible when it comes to especially meeting people of like different personalities, different types, different backgrounds. Um, Often when you're traveling, you don't know what the person's thinking, and you don't know um, how they're actually feeling, because usually there's a sort of barrier in culture and language and just experience in general. And so understanding and having the perspective of different cultures, I feel like with I'm able to not confront but navigate through like more people's have a better understanding, I guess, of like what a lot of people are trying to say. An example of it, that's a really tough question. I feel like I could pinpoint a specific time in which I was traveling, where there was a clear barrier between me and the person that I was talking to, and just from like a mutual respect and understanding. And because it is frustrating to like not understand and not be able to even get to like the surface level point um of what the conversation is trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I've been in a situation where like I'm thinking like this is what they're saying, or this is what they're trying to say, and then um I'll like use hand gestures and stuff. And a part of traveling also has made me a faster thinker when it comes to um language, picking up language. And so that's another thing in which when I couldn't understand this person, I was thinking about what they're trying to say, and then remembering different parts of my trip and like everything that I've learned in that trip so far, and then using those to convey what I was trying to say, and then eventually like coming up with something. I don't know.
No, definitely. And I remember from just when we were talking to get to know each other more last spring, you mentioned being able to, going off the whole language aspect, being able to speak multiple languages. So can you just, share with our audience any languages you know and how you've learned, and any tips for picking up languages or trying to speak when there is that disconnect and you don't understand?
Um So I grew up bilingual. I know how to speak English and Indonesian, and my mom is actually trilingual and she knows how to speak fluent German. So when I was younger, she would always try to like sneak in some German words. So I'm sort of like semi trilingual, and I'm actually also a French minor, so I'm trying to learn
Getting there,
French
yeah.
and hopefully be fluent in it someday. Fingers crossed. Um, but just like the exposure to like, I think some people um they often think that learning different languages or bilingualism confuses the brain, um, and there's no doubt that one language will eventually become stronger, although the exposure to different words and different meanings and different understandings will, in my opinion, I think that like it teaches me to narrow things down in different languages and like remember things and pinpoint different, sort of like reroute my brain faster. So in a way, like teaches me to like think faster. Um, and the more you practice, the more languages you speak, and the more of that confusion sort of sits in your head, the faster you'll be able to like, oh, this is this. I was eventually able to guess the price of the bus ticket and just use my hands to like um to ask him if this was the right price, and said yes, paid, and that was just one instance in which that happened.
Yeah, no, that I think that's a really good piece of advice also, just because I feel like as myself, someone who only can speak English, I really wanted to learn Spanish and I've taken it for so many years, but I just can't get it through my head for some reason. I think I get so nervous and timid at the ideas of going somewhere where there's languages and language barrier, and thinking it might interfere with my experience. But I think that taking what you said about being open-minded, flexible, and then also just like trying to use the skills that I have, I shouldn't look at it as a barrier. It shouldn't impede on my, ability to go travel. So I think that that's a really good tip for learning a new language. And then lastly, like just in a quick one phrase, for someone like myself who again has never left the country, hasn't really traveled, um, what piece of advice, or I guess tip, would you have for the mindset? Like what kind of mindset should I have going into this experience in order for me to really get the most of traveling?
Um, I think that a tip that I would have for new travelers, um, or just travelers in general, um, is to be very open, um, and to respect um, the culture and everyone's culture. And I think that I would phrase it as a like a teaching and learning moment, um, when you're faced or encountering someone from a different culture who speaks a different language and they have a different lifestyle. I think that those differences, those are what makes us so unique. I think that it's such like if they have something that they do that's super different to what we do, then that's a lesson for us, and then in return, like we can give a little taste of like what it's like um to do the same thing but in a different way and talk about those differences.
Well said. I really great piece of advice to leave off with. But of course, I cannot finish this interview without asking, as you are such the world traveler, where is the next place you're planning on going? Where is your next adventure?
That is a really tough question, actually. I, fun fact, have actually traveled to every single continent except Africa. And I think that that would be such a great place to explore since I've never really been exposed to anything like it or close to it. I really want to explore Northern Africa and as well as Northern Lights. I
Yeah,
think that's just like
I know. That's on my list too. I really want to check that off and see the
a
North.
childhood dream just to
Oh
see like North Pole and like Santa Claus and all that.
yeah. No, definitely. Well, thank you so, so much. That concludes our interview. Dita, as always, so great to talk to you. Thank you again for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I hope you enjoyed it.
definitely did, and I'm sure our audience will as well.